Well, thanks so much, Swati. In fact, this entire stretch that you can see behind me, right from Rashtrapati Bhavan, far ahead, if you can see it in the horizon, with, of course, North Block and South Block right next to it, down that entire road up till where we are standing. And if the camera can just turn around, if you can request my camera person to turn around and show you behind India Gate, that canopy there where there is a red curtain of sorts that has been put in place. Behind it is the new statue of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose that will adorn this canopy from here on. It's a canopy that has seen, in fact, many a debate. Once, of course, the statue of King George was removed from this in the post-independence era, post-1947. There's been a lot of debate as to whose statue should occupy pride of place over there. And it is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose that the government has decided on. Of course, all of this happening at the same time. The entire central vista has been revamped. The entire area has been revamped. In fact, there are landscaped lawns. There are granite as well as pink sandstone walkways that have been put in place over here. The entire area that has drastically gotten a facelift over the last 20 months, that it has been out of bounds for the common citizens. But now, in fact, we're looking at, in fact, the entire area that is now going to be thrown open to the public. And this is, of course, going to be a very, very significant day. Earlier, of course, entire thing was called Raj Path. That was, of course, a tribute to the Emperor of India at that time, King George V, who visited Delhi during the Darbar move of 1911. And soon after independence, it was renamed Rajpath, which many believe is a literal translation. Of course, there's been a lot of political back and forth on this issue. Of course, the Prime Minister has made a pledge of, in line with the second pledge of what the Prime Minister said during his Independence Day speech. The Prime Minister, remember, had promised to remove all traces of colonial mindset even before the inauguration of the iconic boulevard. Politics, however, erupting on the issue. Opposition asking whether the government will follow its duty or Kartavya of tackling unemployment and inflation. That's the question coming in from the opposition. Listen to these reactions coming in.
राजपथ का नाम कर्तव्य पथ तो भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने रख दिया, अच्छी बात है, लेकिन भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ये बताए कर्तव्य पथ पे चलना कब सीखेगी? चलना तो सीखो प्रभु कम से कम।
ये तब रख सकती है बीजेपी की सरकार जब कर्तव्य पूरा कर रहे हो। भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार को विचार करना चाहिए कि आप कर्तव्य पूरा कर रहे हैं, जिस लिए जनता ने चुना था वो काम कर रहे हैं, जो वादे आपने किए थे वो काम कर रहे हैं। बेरोजगारी है, महंगाई है, आर्थिक स्थिति है, डीजल पेट्रोल की कीमत है, कानूनी व्यवस्था है। क्या आपने ये सब कुछ कर लिया? अगर ये कर ले तब आपको हक है कि कर्तव्य पथ उसका नाम रखें। आपका तो कर्तव्य से कोई वास्ता ही नहीं है।
And we have a guest joining us. In fact, all right, before we go across to them, let's listen to the response coming in from the BJP to these charges coming in from the opposition.
आज मनोज झा विरोध कर रहे हैं राजपथ के नाम बदलने का और उसे कर्तव्य पथ बुलाने का। ये तो उन्हीं से उम्मीद की जा सकती है। जो लोग परिवार पथ पर, जंगल राज पथ पर और माफिया राज पथ पर चल रहे हो, उनको तो कर्तव्य पथ से दिक्कत होनी ही है। सवाल ये पैदा होता है कि जो कर्तव्य उनका था 10 लाख नौकरी देने का, जब अपने कर्तव्य के तहत कुछ लोगों ने तिरंगा लेकर हाथ में नौकरी मांगने वो गए तो उनको खून से लथपथ कर दिया गया लाठी मारकर। तो अपना कर्तव्य वो पूरा करेंगे तो मुझे लगता है कि कर्तव्य पथ से उन्हें परहेज भी नहीं होगा।
All right, we have a guest joining us over here. We have Professor Kapil Kumar, historian, as well as Shantanu Gupta also with us. With us also is Sandeep Ghosh, author. Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist, is with us, as is Uday Mahurkar, author and historian. But before I come across to you, gentlemen, I want to first and foremost go across to Amish Tripathi, author and director of the Nehru Centre, London. Thank you so much for joining us, Amish. Amish, first and foremost, your big takeaway from today's event. What are you looking forward to?
No, a few wonderful things that are happening, which, as an Indian, I'd love to see. Seeing the statue of Netaji Bose, at the central Vista, at the Kartavya Path, is fantastic. Those of us who follow history, there is a view that actually we got our independence due to the revolt of the naval cadets in 1946, and they were all inspired by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So it's wonderful to see that that being set right in a way in the narrative of our country. The second thing is that this is not the capital of the British Raj in India. This is the capital of a civilization, of the Indian people, and it must reflect that in our approach. The people should have a path into the central areas of the capital. Earlier, the India Gate, the people couldn't enter. Now they can. What is the plan is also that the North Block and the South Block will become museums. So what was the center of power will become the center of, in a way where the Indian people can explore our civilizational heritage. The last thing is, of course, this was a capital built by the British Raj for their colonial structure. So they did not have offices or houses for what a democratic state would need. For example, a chief justice, a vice president, these offices were not there because it was built for the British Raj. Now that is being set right, which is also good. So it becomes a more efficient capital.
All right. Also, what do you say about the name being changed from Rajpath to Kartavya Path? Because there is a counter view that it was called the Kingsway earlier, which had already been changed to Rajpath. So where do you stand on that debate?
The thing is, I think Kartavya Path is a good idea because it reflects our civilizational approach to what the ruling class is supposed to do. The concept of the ruling class having primarily rights rather than duties is not really a traditional Indian approach. I'm living in London right now, and I can tell you even the way the places are named around here are based on the earlier approach, where it's named more on the king. It was the Kingsway, which was named after King George, and that was translated literally to Rajpath. Whereas the duty of a ruler is to serve his or her people. Kartavya Path, I think, perhaps captures that Indic thought much more deeply. I think it's a good idea. And look, Kartavya is it's not a destination; it's a journey, and we have to keep doing our duty.
Right, absolutely. And Amish, you're an author, you're someone who's currently living in London, and therefore it is perhaps apt to ask you this, as India, or the government at least, says that it is doing away with symbols of the colonial past, colonial relics, what have you. How do you view this? Because there are also critics who say that this is a nationalistic push that is being undertaken and an attempt to rewrite history by the current regime. How do you view this?
Look, I mean, there are debates within India, one, tackling on that, but I can tell you what the view of the interlocutors, the British that I speak to. The British themselves suggest decolonization. In fact, in the West there is a movement to call into account the crimes of the past. Slavers out here, their statues are being removed, not just in in the UK, in the US, in various parts. The British themselves would probably support. Now, they may not agree with everything that we do. That doesn't matter. But in principle terms, that should the formerly oppressed decolonize their state and the narratives around their civilization, yes, the British themselves largely support it, actually.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Amish, and sharing with us your views. Let's, in fact, take across some of those questions to some of our panelists here. In fact, Professor Kapil, if I can come to you first. This entire name change, as far as Rajpath is concerned, you're one of those who's been very actively campaigning for it. There is a view that, the name was already changed, and I put this question to Amish Tripathi as well. There's a view that it was already changed. It was Kingsway earlier. It's being called Rajpath, and there's nothing political about Raj because it does not represent any ideology.
Yeah, they are saying Raj means rule.
Yes.
So you want to keep it as ruler's path, as ruler's road, and Kartavya means a duty of everyone. Citizen, government, bureaucrat, soldiers, everyone. You see, they have to find excuses. You tell me one thing. This canopy was lying vacant for 68, it's after 1968, 52 years. Why couldn't they decide one revolutionary to be put up here in this canopy? How will they defend that? And if they want to say nothing was changed, please answer me, Amish ji. Why the last representative of the Britishers in this country, who had ruled over us, exploited us, killed our people, massacred us, was made the first Governor General of India? And why, for Lady Edwina, INS Nilgiri was sent with garlands over there. Wasn't that slavery? And if this slavery is being broken, these brown saabs sitting in London, we don't need brown saabs in this country. We need people, Indian nationalists. We know who want to serve the Indian people.
Absolutely.
It's a limit to the brown saabs that they will still in London take fellowships over there and try to teach us history.
No, that is a question that I asked.
You tell me,
actually.
man.
That's a question. All right, let's listen in. All right, some reactions coming in. Some reactions coming at this moment. Let's listen.
वो ही एक पक्ष दिखाया गया कि हमें जो है वो भूख हड़ताल करके या डांडी मार्च करके ही हमें आज़ादी मिली है, ऐसा नहीं है। कई लाखों लोगों ने खून बहाया है और हम लोगों ने जो नेताजी ने जिस तरह से पूरे वर्ल्ड में एक कैंपेन करके भारत की जो दुर्दशा है उस पर पूरी दुनिया की नजर लाई, चाहे उन्होंने वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 में हिस्सा लिया, चाहे उन्होंने अपनी एक आर्मी बिल्ड की, उन्होंने एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेशन किया एंड उसके करके जो अंग्रेजों पे प्रेशर बिल्ड हुआ, फिर उन्होंने सत्ता जिसको दी वो उनकी मर्जी थी, लेकिन नेताजी सत्ता के भूखे नहीं थे, नेताजी आजादी के भूखे थे और उन्होंने देश को आजादी दी।
कर्तव्य पथ को कैसे आप डिस्क्राइब करना चाहेंगे? किस तरह से डिस्क्राइब करना चाहेंगे? कर्तव्य पथ से आपको क्या लगता है कि क्या पहले राजपथ था?
पाथ ऑफ ड्यूटी इंस्टेड ऑफ। सो ये जो रास्ता है, ये रास्ता आने वाली कई पीढ़ियों, ये जो रास्ता है, ये आने वाली कई नेताजी सत्ता के भूखे नहीं थे, नेताजी आजादी के भूखे थे और उन्होंने देश को आजादी दी।
कर्तव्य पथ कहा गया राजपथ नहीं होगा, कर्तव्य पथ होगा। एक सेकंड यार,
कर्तव्य पथ
है कि क्या पहले राजपथ था?
पाथ ऑफ ड्यूटी इंस्टेड ऑफ। सो ये जो रास्ता है, ये रास्ता आने वाली कई पीढ़ियों, ये जो रास्ता है, ये आने वाली कई पीढ़ियां इस पे चलेंगी। तो अगर आप राजपथ रखेंगे तो वो वैसा रास्ता होगा, ये कर्तव्य पथ है। तो ये मार्गदर्शन है, इट इज सिंबॉलिक ऑफ सो मेनी थिंग्स, right? Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so that was Kangana Ranaut, in fact, talking about the significance and the symbolism of today. Let me quickly bring in Major General G.D. Bakshi, who's live with us. You've written about Netaji, you've written about the role, and in fact, it is perhaps the first time that he's being honored in the national capital, despite the fact that he's a household name in India. How do you see this dichotomy as to why Netaji was not given his due for the past several decades?
Netaji, first of all, this is a path-breaking event. For the first time, Netaji has been mainstreamed, and we hope now that along with him, the INA will also be mainstreamed, and this whole process that Prime Minister Modi ji has started will be complete once we have a war memorial. Out of 60,000 INA soldiers, 26,000 laid down their lives fighting. You know, in the National War Memorial just across, you know what is the total number of name? 26,682. And that is
a larger contribution pre-independence, that's what you're saying.
That is from 1.3 million men of the Army, Navy, Air Force from 47 till date. Here is a force of 60,000, out of which 26,000 have laid down their lives, 44% have laid down their lives. The second thing that I wish to make is that you asked a very pertinent query as to why we did not, give him his due so long. The simple fact is that immediately after independence, your first Governor General was Lord Louis Mountbatten. And his first order was not one person from the INA will be taken back into the Indian Army. Their pensions will be put to a halt right away, and they will be treated as traitors.
Not recognized as freedom fighters till 1970.
So that, and till 1977, as he is rightly brought out, their pensions were restored only when the Janta government came to power.
Right.
So this is not only, marginalizing. This is deliberately trying to treat the people who fought for you, who died for you, and because of whom you are actually free.
Okay.
If you go by empirical facts, I'm not...
I believe the Union Minister Hardeep Puri is speaking live. Let's cut across live to that. I'm sorry. Let's quickly go across to Amit Kumar for more on that. Amit Kumar is joining us from this very venue of the Kartavya Path. Amit Kumar, ये बताइए कि इस वक्त मंत्री आ गए हैं यहाँ पे, हाउसिंग मंत्री हरदीप पुरी वो आ गए हैं, काफी सेलिब्रिटीज भी आते दिख रहे हैं, टॉप ऑफिशियल्स भी आते दिख रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री का कब तक यहाँ पर अराइवल होगा, कुछ और डिटेल्स बताइए कि कब तक ये प्रोग्राम शुरू हो सकता है।
देखिए शाम 7 बजे का टाइम है, जब 7 बजे ठीक 7 बजे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी यहाँ लाल इंडिया गेट पर पहुंच जाएंगे और सबसे बड़ी बात की आते ही वो सबसे पहले वो अनावरण करेंगे। ये जो आप पीछे देख रहे हैं इंडिया गेट के ठीक पीछे जो कैनोपी है, उस कैनोपी में आप देखिए वहां पर अनावरण होगा सुभाष चंद्र बोस की प्रतिमा का। और ये अनावरण करने के बाद इसके बाद जो अगला जो प्रोग्राम है से भी मिलेंगे, जो जिन लोगों ने इस पूरे राजपथ जो है, जो कि अब कर्तव्य पथ है, उसको पुनर्विकसित किया है, उनसे मुलाकात होगी। इसके अलावा यहाँ पर वो घूमेंगे, नीचे देखेंगे और इसके बाद 7:40 पर वो यहाँ मंच पर पहुंचेंगे और इसके बाद यहाँ पर उनका स्वागत होगा। और 8 बजे ठीक 8 बजे प्रधानमंत्री का भाषण होने वाला है और ठीक 8:30 बजे यहाँ पे ड्रोन शो होने वाला है। तो ये पूरे कार्यक्रम की तैयारी हो गई है। जो कंगना से हमने जब पूछा कि ये जो यहाँ पर प्रतिमा लगाई जा रही है सुभाष चंद्र बोस को किस तरह देखते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा था कि ये प्रतिमा नहीं है बल्कि आइडियोलॉजी है। क्योंकि कंगना ने एक बात कही कि वो खुद गांधीवादी नहीं है, वो नेतावादी है और वो मानते हैं। सर कितना बड़ा दिन है सर आज? कितना बड़ा दिन है सर आज? सुभाष चंद्र बोस की प्रतिमा लग रही है। देखिए तमाम जो केंद्रीय मंत्री है वो यहाँ आ रहे हैं और फिल्म इंडस्ट्री से जुड़े लोग आ रहे हैं। और ये बड़ा दिन है क्योंकि न सिर्फ गुलामी के प्रतीक के तौर पर राजपथ का नाम बदलकर कर्तव्य पथ किया गया है, सेंट्रल विस्टा एवेन्यू का कि आज जो है ये एरिया पूरा उसको देश को समर्पित करेंगे, बल्कि लगभग 75 साल से ज्यादा वक्त हुआ आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहे हैं। और ऐसे मौके पर सुभाष चंद्र बोस की प्रतिमा उस जगह जहां पर जॉर्ज पंचम की थी, उस कैनोपी के नीचे। तो मुझे लगता है ये खास दिन है। सबको इंतजार 7 बजे का, जब प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र जाएंगे।
ऑल राइट, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। आपके साथ हम आगे आएंगे और अपडेट्स मिलेंगे। बट लेट मी गो बैक टू प्रोफेसर कपिल. Professor Kapil, you were making a very, very important point that those members of the INA, they were actually treated as traitors to the Indian government in the early years of our independence. This is just a process of setting right that mentality, because clearly somewhere, although India may have got rid of the British, we may have got rid of the colonial masters, we did not get rid of the colonial mentality.
Not at all, you see. And you see, a basic thing is a psyche. And the colonial psyche still prevails in this country in many respects, not in one respect. And unless we change that psyche, we will not be able to move ahead, you see. Otherwise it's a question of mental slavery now. Okay, there is no more colonialism, but people will say, I want international brands, I want this, I am a global citizen, this, that, without taking these aspects of nation. Now, INA soldiers, whole country was fooled that on 3rd January 46, the trials are over and there will be no further trials. Kept away from history books that on 10th January, 1029 INA officers and soldiers marked as black, the most dangerous, were shifted to Multan by a special train from Jigar Kacha in Bengal. No one knows what happened after to them. Colonel Rama Rao, Dr. Colonel Ramchandra Rao, the person who gave evidence that there was no plane crash because Netaji never flew in that plane, and I was with him in Vietnam. Will you believe, before the Khosla Commission in 1972, he comes in chains? He's been put in under false charges without any trial in Bhubaneswar and Sikandrabad jails over there. That was his,
So it was a deliberate attempt at suppressing the truth of Netaji.
See, not only that, in 1948, all the prime ministers of provinces, they were called prime ministers at that time, they write to Nehru, war is going on with Pakistan. Please call back the INA trained people. And Nehru says, make them home guards.
Okay.
And don't keep them in one unit.
Okay.
What was the fear of keeping them in one unit?
What was the fear? What was the concerns at that point of time? I'm going to go back to Shantanu as well as Professor Kapil on these points, but we're going to slip into a very quick break. We'll be back with more updates, more news. Stay tuned to us. Coverage of the inauguration of the redeveloped Central Vista as well as Kartavya Path, and of course the unveiling of the Netaji statue right here at the India Gate. We'll be bringing you all the updates from here, speaking to several of the guests who are gathered over here. But first and foremost, let me take you across to my colleague Meghna Deka, who's going to show us the difference between the earlier Central Vista and what we're going to be witnessing now. Over to you, Meghna.
Well, thank you very much, Madhav. Yes, everyone's very excited about what the new revamped Central Vista is going to be looking like, which is why we are getting you a sneak peek into it. This is what it looked like for all the people who are familiar with India Gate. These are the iconic scenes that we've always seen. But remember, all of this was red sand, it was red mud, and also these green areas, these green gardens would often get waterlogged every time it rained. However, this time around, the new Central Vista Avenue will have no such problems because it has state-of-the-art drainage system in this entire area, which is going to ensure that there is no waterlogging in any of this. In addition to that, this red mud and dirt road has now proper red granite over it. So all of this is stoned and it is completely paved. This is on either sides of the main road, which remember leads up to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Meanwhile, this is the second one. Now, this is very interesting. Everyone would have memories of going to India Gate for ice cream. However, these kiosks may have been removed, but now there's a proper place where they are all going to be situated. Not just that, this new Central Vista is also going to be showcasing India's diversity with state stalls, which are going to come up as well, in addition to the ice cream stalls. So this is what it looked like earlier, and now, as you can see, the greens are completely rolling on. There are trees which have always lined up. These trees go untouched, but the areas where these street vendors used to be now have been put properly in one corner. Another picture that we are getting for you, which goes to show how the pavements and the green paths have been created. This is the lush green that you can now expect when you go towards that side. The entire Central Vista Avenue, as it is now going to be called, no longer will it be called Raj Path. It is now going to be called the Kartavya Path. And this is the visual, and this is where some of the boat rides have been happening in the past. However, this entire canal has been redone and completely revamped with state-of-the-art technology to ensure you have literally smooth sailing. Not just that, several other pictures are coming in as to what it looked like earlier and what it looks like now. This is how a lot of this canal area, remember, it was stinky and it was dirty, and there was a lot of moss which was growing in it. All of that has been cleaned up, as you can see. Look at the way it looked like earlier, and look at the way the green blue waters are going to be there to greet you. Before, as you can see, it was all littered and there was barely any sparse grass, but now it's all going to be lush green. A lot of work and manpower has gone in to ensure that it looks lush green and beautiful. And look at the way how these mud paths have been all floored with stone, and these lights, all of this has been newly erected as well. Massive light posts have come up and all the greens have been properly turfed out as well. This is one of the iconic views that you could see earlier, but as you can see, the entire landscaping has been done in such a way that there are also places and benches which have been created for anyone who would want to sit there and enjoy Central Vista. Over to you, Madhav. This is a small glimpse of perhaps much larger picture which you are getting to enjoy at this time.
Well, certainly there are dignitaries over here, officials, diplomats, all of them present. But what is most significant is today the fact that Subhash Chandra Bose's statue is going to be unveiled here at the canopy. And to talk about that, I have with me several of the veterans who've actually served in the INA, in the Azad Hind Fauj. Let me speak first and foremost to Lieutenant Madhavan. Lieutenant Madhavan, how do you feel today? कैसा लग रहा है आपको ये statue यहाँ पे unveil होते देख के? How do you feel?
बहुत आनंद हो रहा है, बहुत गौरव है, और देशवासी दुनिया हिंदुस्तान के अंदर में कितने जनता लोग है, यानी के परिवार तमाम सो आनंद से आनंद बोलने का नहीं है। मोदी जी का कोटि कोटि धन्यवाद।
आपको बुरा लगता था कि नई दिल्ली में अभी तक सुभाष चंद्र बोस का स्टैचू नहीं था? आजादी की लड़ाई में इतना बड़ा योगदान था उनका, लेकिन उनका स्टैचू नहीं था दिल्ली में। कभी बुरा लगता था?
अफसोस है, अफसोस है। आजादी होने के बाद में नेताजी ने एक स्टैचू नहीं लगाया, बहुत अफसोस सब लगा, रोने का। अभी भी मैं रो जाऊंगा ऐसा। आज है ठीक है, सब खुशी के बात है। ये मोदी जी का है, उसी का उसका मेहरबानी कभी भी हम नहीं भूल सकता। आने वाले लोग हम लोग
आजादी के बाद भी आईएनए के जो सैनिक थे उनके योगदान को बहुत सालों तक 68 तक उनको रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं किया गया। हाँ, तो आप कैसे देखते हैं अब इन सब चीजों की सोच में अब बदलाव जो आ रही है, इसको कैसे देखते हैं?
स्टेप पहले नेहरू जी और इंदिरा जी और राजीव गांधी जी ऐसे कितने प्रधानमंत्री आकर के किया है, और उस टाइम में हमारा कोई हमारा आईएनए के बारे से कोई सोचा भी नहीं है। आईएनए के परिवार कैसा जी रहे हैं करके वो भी नहीं है। अब मोदी जी आने के बाद में हम लोग का ये पेंशन भी बढ़ाया, मेडिकल का भी हम लोग को इंक्रीज किया, सब चीज। और दूसरे प्रधानमंत्री के पास मैं बुरा नहीं बोलता, तो क्या कर रहा हूँ,
उनके पास वक्त नहीं था। पांडे जी आप बताइए कैसा महसूस कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे जो नेताजी की स्टैचू का उद्घाटन होना है, कैसा लग रहा है, कैसा महसूस कर रहे हैं आप?
बरसों से हम लोगों की प्रतीक्षा थी और कई बार अखबार में भी लिख चुके थे तो नेताजी का स्टैचू यहाँ लगना चाहिए। आज मोदी जी की बड़ी कृपा है तो यहाँ स्टैचू लगा के भारतवासियों के मन में एक सुकून पैदा की है, बहुत बड़ी बात है। जय हिंद।
आप क्यों मानते हैं, क्यों अभी तक उनके योगदान को इस तरह से देखा नहीं गया था या उसका सम्मान नहीं किया गया था? राजनीति की वजह से किया गया था?
हाँ, यही बात थी। लोगों के हृदय में नेताजी के लिए स्थान था, व्यक्ति के हृदय। नेताजी तो एक ही हुआ था देश में, अब तो हुए मिलता नेता है, लेकिन नेताजी का एक नारा था, नारा जय हिंद का पैगाम है मेरा, इसे सीने से लगा लेना, ये निशान है मेरा, सिपाही रहूं वतन का बनकर, ये अरमान है मेरा, मैं रहूं या न रहूं, आजाद रहे हिंदुस्तान हमारा, जय हिंद। बोलने में थोड़ी सी परेशानी हो रही है
जी। कई लोगों का मानना है कि ब्रिटिश भारत छोड़ के नहीं जाते अगर नेताजी का योगदान नहीं होता, क्या मानते हैं आप?
ये बिल्कुल सही बात है। बिना कर के बिना ढाल के आजादी नहीं मिली। आजादी तो खून, आजादी सेना के चलते ही आजादी मिली, नहीं तो आजादी तो बहुत दूर थी। आजादी हिंद फौज अगर नहीं होता तो आजादी कहाँ मिलती? ये तो है ही, ये तो सारा देश के लोगों को जानता है, लेकिन नेताजी को दबा के रखा गया, उनको हाईलाइट नहीं होने दिया पिछली सरकार। लेकिन धन्यवाद मोदी जी को जिन्होंने नेताजी को हाईलाइट करके स्थापित किया है देश में।
All right, so that is in fact the view of very emotional statements coming in from those who are part of the INA. They were in fact soldiers fighting for the independence of India, and today they say that they not only stand vindicated, they are grateful that Netaji has been honored, something that has not happened as a victim of politics perhaps, or for whatever reason he was not given the rightful place in terms of his contribution being recognized towards India's freedom and towards the contribution towards India's freedom. So all of these are some of the important points that in fact have been made by several of these INA veterans. We will in fact quickly go across to several of our panelists who are joining us at the moment. In fact, with us at the moment it continues to be Shekhar Iyer as well as Uday Mahurkar. Shekhar Iyer, if I can come to you, very important points that we were making earlier, that we were being told about, in terms of the significance and the symbolism of today's event. Today you have heard it from INA veterans themselves who are so emotional today at this moment because they say that finally due recognition is being given to Subhash Chandra Bose.
Indeed, Mother, when you hear these veterans, actually, they are in tears, the tears of joy that finally, their leader, Netaji, has finally found a place in the heart of Delhi. I mean, it is indeed even moving for us. And the question remains, why did it take such a long time to just have a statue of Netaji?
That question is for you. What would you say to this emotional statement coming in from INA veterans in terms of how they are looking at today's event and how an injustice has now been rectified?
What is, the fact that there are tears of joy, rolling down their cheek, one can see that they feel that finally honor has been done to Netaji. And it still remains a mystery.
With Shekhar Iyer, in fact, let me quickly now take this across to other guests who are joining us. With us also is Sunil Deore, sculptor of the national emblem. Sunil Deore, if I can take this across to you, how do you look at this particular event? In fact, in the past also, there have been controversies surrounding any of these symbols being launched. Your views on this redeveloped Raj Path, which is now being called the Kartavya Path as well?
Can I speak in Hindi? Hello? हेलो। हाँ हाँ, ये आज जो संसद, नई संसद और ये सब ये देख के मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है और बहुत गौरवान्वित महसूस कर रहा हूँ मैं। और जो हमने एफर्ट्स लिए थे उसका आज उसका परिणति दिन मतलब आ चुका है। हेलो।
Right. Let me in fact go across to Mr. Uday Mahurkar as well. Uday Mahurkar ji, you've seen the statements coming in. You've seen this entire event. There are 3 or 4 important things happening at the same time. Not only, of course, the statue of Netaji, of course, a long pending promise of this government that is now going to be unveiled. Kartavya Path, another renaming that has gotten into controversy because you have opposition saying that was already changed from Kingsway to Rajpath, as well as a redeveloped Central Vista being rededicated to the nation and to the public. What's the biggest takeaway for you, sir, today?
You see, I see this as a great day in the history of independent India, because this is part of a much larger process for reclaiming true history of this country. I reminded of one conversation which finds mention in the history of Bengal by the great historian R.C. Mazumdar. It's a conversation between Attlee, the person who gave us freedom, and the then acting governor of Bengal, P.V. Chakravarti. This was in 1956 when Attlee was no more the Prime Minister, had come to Calcutta, had stayed with Chakravarti. Over a cup of tea, Chakravarti asked him कि after 1942 Congress had failed to build any pressure on the Britishers. So then why did you decide to leave in 1947? Chakravarti notes that initially he was not so keen to reply the question. But when he insisted, Attlee said that the INA revolution, the returning soldiers from First World War who wanted the Britishers to leave, they were saying that we have done our duty for you, now you must leave this country. And third was the 1946 Navy mutiny, which started from the Mumbai dock and spread to I think 20-30 docks across the ports across the country. These were the key reasons which compelled the British to leave this country. Chakravarti went further. He asked what was the role of Gandhiji and Congress. Chakravarti says Attlee's lips got twisted, and with twisted lips he said minimal. This is the true history of this country, which is now we are reclaiming. Right. And today's event is part of that much larger process. But let me expand the debate.
All right.
You see, Prime Minister on 15th August spoke about erasing all symbols of slavery. Slavery means a slavery which is we can talk about it from almost 13th century onwards. So it is imperative that medieval era symbols of slavery also should be done away with. For example, Lodi Road. For example, Tughlaq Road,
right.
Babar Road.
All right, Mr. Mahurkar, certainly, of course, that's a statement of the government that we're doing away with colonial relics and colonial symbols. And of course, that's the debate, because there are those in the opposition who say that it's a nationalism push. Of course, that's the ideological debate and the larger war that we're seeing on that front. But let's first take you through a virtual tour of the entire redeveloped Rajpath, or now that is called the Kartavya Path, and the entire Central Vista. Pratibha is going to explain to you what this really means on ground. Take a look.
So all eyes are on the redeveloped Central Vista project. So here at Times Now, let's give you a virtual tour of the entire Kartavya Path. This is where I'm standing. So to give you a virtual tour, this was earlier known as Rajpath. So the first stop, we're going to be stopping at the MP's offices. One of the most important parts of the redevelopment project. This is where the elected representatives are going to have their offices. And of course, on this side, one of the most important landscapes of it, one of the most important parts of it, the Prime Minister's residence. Of the total built-up area, the Prime Minister's residence will be spread over 36,000 square feet. Now, let's go to the next stop. On either side of the road here, you will have India at 75 Museum and the Making of India Museum. These museums will showcase artifacts from across the country, with the focus being on instilling nationalistic pride. Now let's go across to our next stop. This, of course, is one of the most important parts of it all. The new Parliament building is going to be right here at the center of Kartavya Path. The Museum of Indian Democracy is also right next to the Parliament. Now let's go across a little further. This is a 3-kilometer stretch, and at the end of it, we are going to see the India Gate. But before that, there's going to be one little stop as well, and this is for the Central Conference Center and the Central Secretariat. Like the Prime Minister has mentioned, it's no longer the power corridor. This is an area of the people, which is why the entire stretch has been redeveloped. Finally, coming to the end of it, the India Gate, now shedding the colonial baggage completely and welcoming the Indian pride.
All right, and we have several dignitaries who are coming here, several celebrities. Even with us is Mr. Gajen Chauhan now. How do you see this? How do you see this? A big day, because there is the unveiling of Netaji Bose's statue that's going to take place, something that has not been done in central Delhi in a long, long time. He's been given his due, is of course something that many are saying. Central Vista has been redeveloped and Rajpath is being called Kartavya Path. Where do you stand? What's the biggest takeaway for you today?
I think India is transforming for the betterment. And this work should have been done long time back. It was overdue. Respect to our Netaji. But now it is happening. We are proud of it, and we will be, like we are watching this moment live. So it's a great moment for all of us. It's a historical moment. And as you spoke about Kartavya Path, instead of ruling someone under the rule of somebody, better to perform our duties. This is like symbolical from the Honorable Prime Minister Sahab. Duty is ahead of everything in life, duty towards your country, duty towards your society. So better perform duties, don't wait for the result. That is why it is called Kartavya Path.
All right, so very, very important message coming in there from Gajen Chauhan, message from the Prime Minister. And it's not just for the citizens, it's for the government, it's for the bureaucrats, it's for everyone, including the politicians, that everyone has to do their duty. It's not just the rights of the citizens that matter, the duties also go hand in hand. And that's the message coming out of the renaming.
I hope you will excuse me. Yeah, I take the liberty with you. Sir, बधाई हो। नमस्कार। बड़ा मौका है। सर, आज तो कर्तव्य पथ पे। सर, आज
पथ पर चलकर इस देश में जनसेवक के रूप में हम सबको आम सामान्य नागरिक के रूप में इस देश की वैभव और एक नक्षत्र की तरह उभारने की क्षमता जो हमारे देश में, उस पर पूर्ण रूप से हमें लगना है। यही प्रधानमंत्री का आह्वान देश के हर नागरिक के लिए, हम सब के लिए। उससे प्रेरणा लेते हुए हम लोग जूझ कर उस सोच विचारधारा को हम लोग साकार करने के लिए पूर्ण रूप से हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे।
बहुत सारे से नेताजी। अच्छा, ठीक है।
All right, so that's the reaction coming in. Let me quickly take this across to Mr. Sunil Devara. Sunil Devara, the duties of citizens equally responsible. Very, very equally important, in fact, and they are, of course, also responsible for their actions. That's the message now that coming in from Kartavya Path. Rather than just being ruler-centric to being people-centric. That's what the government says is the thought process behind this renaming. Your views on that, Sunil Devara?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A hearty welcome to all.
सर, ये जो ये हो रहा है, ये एस्थेटिकली बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है मुझे। जो नया राजपथ, ये कर्तव्य पथ को इसमें किया है। हेलो। और जो सेंट्रल विस्टा के बिल्डिंग पे जो मुझे काम दिया गया था एम्ब्लेम का, जो कंप्लीट 30 फीट का है, उसको हमने बहुत चैलेंज से पूरा 200% एफर्ट देके मैंने उसको बनाया है। इसमें बहुत चैलेंजिंग ये था कि वो 9 टन का ब्रॉन्ज कास्टिंग, प्योर ब्रॉन्ज कास्टिंग हमने उसको पार्ट में इंस्टॉल किया। और ये जो सम्राट अशोक के ज़माने में ये सोचा गया था, जो रिप्लिका हमने जो हमारी है, कि चारों दिशाओं में भारतवर्ष का मैसेज 4 शेर दे रहे हैं, पीस का मैसेज है। और नीचे हमारे जो सिंबल है उसका जो एक अद्भुत ये शिल्प है उसका पूरा स्टडी करके
All right. We'll come back to Mr. Deora. Of course, a lot that's to be discussed as far as this entire event is concerned. A lot of transformations taking place here in the heart of the national capital. We'll be discussing the impact of that.